Welcome to Beyond the Book with Julie, a chance for inspiration and insight from the authors. Dr. Harville Hendrix and Dr. Helen LaKelly Hunt are the co-authors of Getting the Love You Want. More than 4 million copies have been sold over the years. This book has helped millions of people experience more satisfying relationships and is recommended every day by professional therapists and couples around the world who are experiencing pure happiness. Hendrix and Hunt explain in this book how to revive romance and remove negativity from our relationships. Now in quarantine, what advice do you have for people?
Well, I'd first like to speak. I asked Harville if I could go first because I'm so excited that the brain sciences are now showing that healthy relationships help your body become healthy. Number one, you don't get sick as often, and number two, you live longer. And what they're now saying also is that healthy relationships strengthen your immune system to fight against the COVID virus. So there's a real incentive for doing this, body health, but also relationship health. So we really feel like we have to get this message out, and we're so honored to be with you today.
What is the number one way during this pandemic when we're all at home, the number one way we can reconnect with our partner and try to build that relationship?
Okay. Well, what we propose is it starts with a thing we've noticed over the years, with whether you're in a crisis or not, that talking is the most dangerous thing people do, and listening is the most infrequent thing people do. And so consequently, when you're talking too much and listening too little, you produce a stress in the relationship, and that leads to conflict. And what we're now learning from the neurosciences is that when you go into conflict, you generate neurochemicals in your bloodstream that depress your immune system. So, and what Helen was saying, if you go in the opposite direction, you get other neurochemicals that strengthen your immune system, so you're less vulnerable to getting sick, even with the virus. So what Helen and I do is help people deal with that issue of the talking being dangerous by making talking safe. And we do that with a process that we've labeled Safe Conversations. And it has, it's a structure. It's like learning tennis. You really have to learn how to swing the racket in order to hit the ball. And if you want to have a safe conversation, you have to do the right things that create safety. And what we have learned are very simple things. Like in COVID virus, everybody's getting on each other's nerves. And so they're making it worse. They're making something that was probably not too good anyway worse. And they have something that was pretty good. It's probably gotten more stressful. So what can help is if you are feeling something and you want to talk to somebody about that, is to ask them, is it okay to talk? We call that make an appointment. And if I make an appointment, it's like, is it okay for me to talk about how scared I am about the virus? Is it okay to talk about what it's like being with our children all day when they were at school? What it's like to be home all day when I was at work? Is it okay to talk? So it's called making an appointment. So then the person you want to talk to can say, I am available to talk, or I'm so preoccupied right now, I don't think I could listen. So you avoid the collision. We call it, everybody has a movie running in their heads, and most of us just ignore that, and we shove our movie on their screen and say, would you watch my movie, please? And the person says, I'm watching my movie. I'm doing something. But if we say, is it okay if I come into your movie house, run my movie, my feelings, my thoughts, and you tell me what you're seeing, then that avoids conflict. And the second thing that we teach people is simply very simple. If somebody's talking to you, after they've asked for an appointment, that you say, uh, let me see if I got that. We call that the mirror. And the reason we do the mirror is that everybody's brain has a set of neurons called mirror neurons.
Mm-hmm.
And when you mirror a human being back, saying, let me see if I got that. So you're really upset about the virus, or you're upset about being at home, you're feeling anxious or scared, whatever it is they're saying. If I mirror you back, you will relax more. But if I don't mirror you back, my brain will want to send the message again until I get a mirroring response.
And that's
Usually
when the
we don't do
nagging
that.
starts,
We just say,
right?
oh, well, I'm sorry. Here's how I'm feeling. In other words, we take over. But so make an appointment, and then when the person is talking, say, let me see if I got it, mirror it back, and that will begin to regulate your feelings so that you can then reduce your relational stress.
There's a dialogue process. There are 3 steps to the dialogue, and one person becomes the sender and one person becomes the receiver.
Yeah.
And we can give you more information about that.
The dialogue process. So you just
Yeah.
walk us straight through it so that
Oh,
there
walk
are
you through
no
it.
questions.
Well, we can do that. The person who sends, the other person mirrors, and they send a message, and then the step 2 is you go, well, that makes sense. And then the step 3 is, and I imagine if you feel that way, you might be feeling sad or anxious or happy, or you empathize with the person. So it's,
Should we do a little short demo
okay?
ourselves?
Okay.
Okay. Shall we do that? Just a little,
Sure.
just to put it into structure after describing it. So shall I start, or you want to start?
Either way.
So is now a good time for us to do a demo?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for being available.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yes, I'd love to hear how you're thinking about being on a demo.
Well, I'm aware we're on Instagram Live, and that we're talking about how to help people reduce relationship stress. And so I thought that one of the ways we could help would be to show how it works rather than just talk about how it works.
So if I got it right, we've been invited to explain how to reduce relationship stress, and rather than talking about it, you think demoing it might be helpful. Did I get it?
You got it.
Is there more about that?
Well, the more about that is I can imagine that anybody, couple, parent and child, employee, employer, whoever, anybody watching this process would think this looks a little bit awkward and stilted.
And so while people watching might think, oh, this is awkward and stilted, is that a thought in your mind?
Yeah.
Also,
And might say, we don't talk that way.
would that make sense? I'm sorry, we don't talk that way. We like to fight. No, okay.
Yeah. And what we're saying, well, absolutely nobody talks this way. This is why we're teaching it.
Mm-hmm.
If everybody talked this way, we wouldn't have a job and wouldn't have a mission to teach this. So that we know it's awkward, but we'd like them to know it's like a skill, like tennis. Or your analogy is like skiing, the
bunny slope.
The bunny slope in skiing. That if you do the practice in swinging a racket or going down the bunny slope, then you can ski or play tennis. But if you don't,
Eventually. If you get to the double black diamonds.
Eventually. But if you don't practice, then you'll just hit the ground or the ball will not go over the net.
Right. So it can feel awkward,
Yeah.
but then even though it's awkward, the end result is a flow, and it feels better after a while.
Yeah, you got it.
So that's the beginning of the dialogue process. And what that does is he feels heard, but what happens is in my brain is I move into a part of my brain where I just get to relax. And instead of like waiting for when's my turn to talk, I've learned to just enjoy mirroring and validating and empathizing. And that's something that's good for the brain.
And so what's interesting is that just doing this enactment, knowing we were doing it, and you responding with eye contact and with a smile and being accurate, I actually feel a kind of energy connection with you while we're talking, even though we're demoing this.
Yeah, and
it's
I
like the
feel
brain
more
doesn't
relaxed.
care, and you feel
Yeah.
more relaxed. The brain doesn't care whether you're doing it in real time or whether you're doing an enactment. The same thing happens because the brain doesn't care about that. So that's a fascinating experience. So you want to feel relational stress is the primary cause of most diseases. And people don't know that and environmental toxins. So if we can reduce relational stress, you can increase your immunity to this particular virus, but you also um, decrease the number of illnesses that you will get, and you increase length of life.
Uh-huh. So let me mention that the second thing is people need to make a commitment to zero negativity.
Oh, yes.
And that means it's not what you say, but how you say it. And safe conversation teaches you to convert a frustration into a request. And if you make the request with a kind tone of voice and a kind look in your eye, we actually can teach you how to deal with conflict in a more mutually respectful way.
Yeah.
But you end up getting what you want. Because if you stomp in and you're angry and you say, this is what I want, it scares the other person.
Yeah.
So back to Harville's first word, you have to make it safe for each other to be different.
It sounds like the most important things are our tone and that we are good listeners and can relay our listening skill back to our partner by repeating and mirroring what they say.
Yes. Yeah. And then to add to that, make it safe by removing negativity. So end of criticism, shaming, blaming, and so forth. That's never helpful. And I think the third thing we might share is that what they have to add. That we've learned that it's great to remove negativity, but it's important that you put something in its place. And we call it affirmations. And the affirmation is, I appreciate you. Thank you for bringing me a cup of coffee I feel cared about. Or why don't we have fun together? Let's take a walk. Anything that affirms the other person as a positive person in your life. What that does, it's also a fascinating brain thing. What that does is Helen feels affirmed and she has a good feeling. When I do it, however, I feel the same feeling that she gets when I do it. So that it's one of those fascinating energy things that whatever I do for Helen, I do for myself. But I don't do it for myself. It's just, it happens to me when I do it to Helen. Mm-hmm. If I fussed at her, the same thing would occur. It would generate, and we discovered it's those chemicals in the brain that show up.
Mm-hmm. I don't know how much longer we have, but I just thought I'd let your viewers know that Harville and I almost divorced. That we were relationship experts, especially Harville. He was the famous one. We had a horrible relationship at home. And I just sort of didn't, I was wanting to hide because we believed in the dialogue, but we didn't do it at home. And so finally we told our family we were divorcing, and we told everyone in our world that we were divorcing. And we then added zero negativity.
No.
And we started doing dialogue, and we had the marriage of our dreams.
Yeah, and I have to give credit, Helen, for the zero negativity process. She came up with that.
Well, and I just wanted people who are watching this to go, oh, those two are made for each other. I have a horrible relationship, and this isn't going to work for us. Well, actually, we had a horrible relationship, too. So we're empathic if anyone out there is struggling.
Yeah, and I think what we need to say is we never give anybody any advice or any theory or practice that we haven't ourselves tested. And that has worked on us, and also it's been tested now in the clinic for about 30 years. So it's not like this is cute little advice and why don't y'all be nice to each other. There are certain things that are scientific that really work and other things don't.
Yeah, we're finally doing it ourselves.
And we're doing that.
When couples find that they have so much built up anger and resentment, and they come to you or they go to your workshop and you see it, you see their anger and their resentment, and it sounds like maybe you experienced it yourself, you have years of that. How do you unleash all of that? And how long can that take?
Oh,
Well, some people need a therapist. So you can contract Zoom sessions with a therapist. But for many of us, it's just creating some structure. One thing that we did was we got a calendar, and every odd day of the month, the first, the third, the fifth, it's my job to make sure we go to sleep connected. And every even day of the month, it's his job. So we boundary time to deal with problems, and we can make a list of the problems and deal with a therapist with them. But when we're not dealing with the problems, we can also build up memories, new memories. Before going to bed at night, sadly, that was when I would tell Harville what he did wrong that day. And we had a terrible relationship. And but now every night before going to bed, we give each other 3 appreciations.
Yeah.
And we have a much better marriage.
yeah. And so with regard to the question of how long it takes when people come angry, what we do in workshops, we put people into this dialogue process immediately in the workshop, because what needs to happen is their feelings need to be regulated so they don't continue to hurt each other. So we put them in that as quickly as possible so that they can begin to structure that. Then when they start talking without polarizing and criticizing each other, the angry feelings begin to go away, because the anger was about the way they were treating each other. So we immediately change the way they talk, change the way they relate. They have a new experience, and then they find their feelings change, and then we can go and talk about what the issues and problems are that they need to change in order to have a better relationship all around. But they can't make any of those changes if they're just angry and defended. So we have to move through that. But we do it immediately because we know that's what works.
Have you ever experienced a couple where there was just no way for reconciliation? And how do those couples know when it's over?
Well, we thought ours was over.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you don't know for sure.
I think the answer that
Well, we give that couple hope,
yeah,
that
we give
maybe
right,
there's hope.
right. We give the couple hope. I think that's the right answer. Is the only way you know it's over is if you will not do anything differently. So if two people say, I'm not going to learn anything, I'm not going to read a book, I'm not going to change my behavior, then obviously you'll continue to get what you've always gotten. But if you change, I think we could say, if you change even one thing positively in a stressful relationship, it begins to change the dynamics in that relationship. Just one thing changes the ecosystem of the brain.
And it's very common that one person goes, we need to work harder, and the other has already given up. And in that case, the person who goes, well, there are just a few things you need to do to change, because it's just, you've had an affair, the money, you took money from the bank account. I mean, real horrible violations. That person who feels indignant, they need to say, I'd like to learn about so-and-so because I want to see if there's anything I can do to help us now. And model working on themselves, and that way the person that's totally given up might come back.
Yeah, and the hard thing to add to that is that I have to ask, how did I contribute to that?
Mm-hmm.
Because we discovered it takes 2 people to make something bad, and it takes 2 people to make something good. So if you go and say, you did it all, that's just false. It took 2 of you to do it all, and so it takes 2 of you to make it work. And I think ownership of what you bring to the relationship, good stuff you bring to it, and ownership of the conflict you bring to it, makes the relationship transformation possible. But if you don't own that you can make a difference, then obviously you won't make a difference.
In your own relationship, when it was so difficult and you were on the verge of divorce, do you think one of you was less willing to come to the table and be open about what you needed to change? Or did you both immediately want to come to the table and fix it?
Uh, Once I make up my mind, I mean, I know I had totally given up. I think you were the one that said, could we try one more time?
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I think we'd have to say that that's the dynamics of couples. Yeah. Usually there's always one more motivated than the other one. And that's a part of their personality. It's nothing about their character. Like the person with more feeling side can go away because they shut their feelings down, or can be more initiative. But there's usually always one taking more action than the other. And that's just the way they're protecting themselves. One by moving toward, one by moving away. So that's why we have to bring them into this conversation so we can balance that energy.
We have a safe conversation first aid kit that we've just created. And it is for people waiting to divorce. It is for people suicidal. It is for, your mental illness. You know, you can make each other mentally ill. It is for domestic violence. And we have just created this first aid kit for anxiety and suffering. And there's your relationship that's hard, but the virus is also, the quarantine may be really making things hard. Mm-hmm. And so we hope this could help. You can go to our website and $25, and then and
the website is safeconversations.com, and I think that was just loaded yesterday or today. It's just brand new, and it had to do with having something available for the stresses created by the virus.
And then there are people trained in Safe Conversations that you can make an appointment with, and they could work with you by Zoom.
Yeah.
So this first day kit is really for a person to look inward and work on themselves before the relationship, would you say?
No.
It's about both of you.
Yeah. Yeah, we always work on the relationship. We found if you go inside yourself, then that pushes you away from the relationship. So we give people skills about how to interact rather than introspect. Because introspection just keeps you inside, and interaction moves you into the relationship. So this kit, first aid kit, helps people do what we've been talking about, how to talk so that you connect rather than polarize.
We only have a few more minutes left, but I wanted to touch on your imago therapy, which imago therapy is something you created. You've done lots of research, and you teach other therapists around the country and the world how to implement imago therapy when they help clients. And it makes so much sense to me. But can you touch on imago therapy just for a few minutes? I know that's hard.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same thing as Safe Conversations.
Yeah. Safe Conversations is a small piece of the whole therapy thing, but it's the core piece, because we found that while it's a skill people learn and practice, mm-hmm. it has amazing therapeutic benefits. But if you go into therapy, you'll spend more time exploring your past, exploring your childhood, exploring all the new behaviors you want to do, and that's a multiple process.
An imago therapist is more capable of handling complex relationship dynamics, and Safe Conversation, people trained in Safe Conversations are happy to help healthy relationships move into a family. But if you have serious problems, you shouldn't see Safe Conversations people, you should see an imago therapist. But they will teach you the same thing. They're just a little more skilled at people with very, very serious dynamics in the relationship.
What I remember from imago therapy and your book, which I found fascinating, was the depth that it went into on your upbringing and how the thing that will bother you most in your relationship is kind of what drew you to that person, because you remember experiencing it in your childhood with your own parents.
And we do that with both. We with Safe Conversations, we talk about childhood challenges, that if you can identify them, then you'll notice your partner has some of those and that you brought them to the relationship. So it really is an echo of imago therapy, either one.
And I think the difference is in Safe Conversations, we identify it, but in therapy, we explore it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you identify it, that gets you started knowing that both of you brought something to the relationship. But you still have to learn how to talk in order to deal with the issues that those childhood memories bring up.
So talking to each other and listening to each other are really the most important things. And we should all be able to do that now since we have so much more time together, right?
Yes, right.
So all relationships should be on the mend, and therapists shouldn't be getting too many calls, although I can imagine they are getting tons.
Oh yeah, the spike in the divorce rate, the spike in anxiety, and domestic violence. No, families are hurting.
Yeah.
And that's why we have a first aid kit. And we plan to be much more in the public going forward. And we just thank you for this opportunity.
Of course. Thank you so much. Thank you both. Love all the work you do. Take care. Thanks for being with us.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Follow at Facebook, Instagram, and our website, Beyond the Book with Julie.